CCUS projects will be required. Today we are at merely 0.042 level. That means there is a huge journey ahead, which is less than 1%. Today there are about 30 CCUS projects around the world, half of the CCS and none of the CCU, where the CO2 is converted to the valuable products on a larger scale. All of the other CCUS projects are in petroleum sector. That's another one. For the enhanced oil recovery, enriching natural gas, etc. If we intend to accelerate the rate and the scale of the CCUS development, it is critical to address the technology gaps across the CCUS value chain, that is the CO2 capture, transport, conversion of the CO2 to value-added products and the storage. The level of technology readiness widely varies across the CCUS value chain. However, it is particularly weak in the domain of CCU, that is utilization. Mostly, as of today, everything is more or less focused towards the enhanced oil recovery, where it is much easier to build the business model. I hope that in today's deliberations, we are going to have focused discussion on the technology gaps. Talking about NTPC, we all know that we are the largest power generating company in the country. We have taken some steps for the carbon capture and utilization, and some of you would have already seen the model which is displayed here in side by side, where we are working on a 10 TPD green methanol plant through the carbon capture and utilizing the green hydrogen. This is through the tertiary amine based chemical route, and we had developed some of the indigenous catalysts for those purposes. Our Netra team, which is I think the critical role is being played by the head of Netra, Mr. Saraswath here for this event also, the team has been working for last 3 years on this. We have taken each of these technologies to the TRL level of 6, 7 in this case. And we hope that in this calendar year, we will be in a position to start dispatching green methanol, which is going to be, I think, the first, maybe a small step, but I'm sure that it will play a very big role for the energy security and the energy transition going forward. Just to summarize, I think in the CCU, or the carbon capture and utilization and sequestration, or the storage is no meaning if you don't really utilize. I think this is going to be a riskier one. I think we are at a stage where the solar power was almost around 15 years back, and we all know that there was a lot of skepticism at that point of time, and people were saying this will not work, that will not work. And today I think everybody has started believing in the solar, and everyone would like to have on their rooftops. So maybe I think the time will come when if the lot of resources in the, especially in the technological development, if it is put forward, this will become a really good viability for a green sustainable future, where we will start utilizing the green energy for the recycling as the motive force, and we will be living a far better, greener, healthier life ahead. I wish that this seminar is going to go in a long way to incite and to try to create a lot of interest, and the scientific community will put its best foot forward to develop the technology, and the commercial world will come forward to put the investments to make it viable in the coming days. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Shri Gurdeep Singh, for your notable inaugural address. You spoke to us about the energy transition through the ages and also the pressing need of the hour to transition to greener fuels and NTPC's green initiatives for CCUS. Ladies and gentlemen, we are extremely pleased to have with us Shri Alok Kumar, Secretary Ministry of Power Government of India. He has held several senior positions both in the state government of Uttar Pradesh as well as the central government. Prior to joining as Power Secretary, he was Additional Chief Secretary, Industrial Development and IT and Electronics in the government of Uttar Pradesh. He has acquired widely recognized expertise in policy and regulatory affairs of India's electricity sector, and he has been the CEO of various public enterprises in transport and electricity sectors. He has also worked in the areas of skill development, handicraft based micro enterprises, apprenticeship programs, and national career services. With these words, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure and honor to invite Sri Alok Kumar and requesting him to kindly deliver the keynote address.
Very good morning to all the distinguished participants in this, as you say, parallel event, not side event. And this is very important because side is something which is not that important, but it is the very important things which we are organizing here. Let me recognize and address first Dr. V.K. Saraswath, our member energy from Niti Aayog. Niti Aayog, as you must be knowing, or let me say, is the National Institution for Transformation of India. It's a policy advocacy think tank of Government of India. And let me also recognize Shri Ghanshyam Prasad ji. He is chairperson of Central Electricity Authority. And this CA is the one which advises us in all the technical matters and also in policy and regulatory matters. So his presence is also very important. And it's a real pleasure for me, ladies and gentlemen, to participate in this parallel event along with the first meeting of the Energy Transitions Working Group of G20 under India's presidency today. I think a lot of people have spoken about the need and urgency of energy transition and what has been done and what remains to be done. I can only say that it is our duty to act boldly to mitigate the effects of climate change and ensure a sustainable future for all. This morning, our Minister, Shri R.K. Singh, spoke in the inaugural session of the working group meeting, and he very emphatically brought out that energy transition has also to go along with the energy security and universal access. This brings us to the real importance of carbon capture and utilization and storage technologies, because currently we all across the world we are using fossil fuels in not only for power generation but for all other major industries. And to see that while we transition from fossil to non-fossil in near future in decades, we continue to maintain energy security, and for that we have to find out more sustainable manner of continue using the fossil fuels till the time we need to use, so that our ultimate objective of energy security is not at all compromised. That is the one big thing. Why this parallel event? India in its presidency has brought out issue notes for all its working group. In the talking of energy transition working group, we have identified 6 priority areas. These are the first priority area. See, the importance is the first is the addressing technology gaps for making energy transition successful. Other priority areas, of course, are the financing, energy efficiency, the fuels for future, and the grid interconnections, and then universal access, solar energy. But this is relevant because this is a priority area of 1. And amongst the identified technologies, there are 5 technologies which were identified. CCUS is one of them. Other 4 are like electrolyzers, the high efficiency fuel cell, the smaller modular reactor, and like. So this parallel event is important because while we are discussing the likely policy interventions in the working group meeting at the same time, this is important to also talk in detail about the technology, what is possible and what we need to do. CCUS is a technology that has the potential to play a crucial role in reducing greenhouse gas emissions and mitigating the effects of climate change. CCUS has the ability to significantly reduce our carbon footprint. This combined with other mitigation strategies such as renewable energy promotion and energy efficiency can help us quickly transition. There is a perception that CCUS is relevant only for power plants. This is not so, because in India, NTPC is leading. We are very happy and very proud what they are doing. But CCUS has an application beyond power generation sector. Rather, in the power generation sector, there is a substitute which is visible on the horizon, renewable energy and storage. But in some other sectors, which I will just now discuss, like hard to avoid sectors where this is far more important and more critical. So other sectors also need to be looked at. These are basically maybe the steel plants, cement plants, chemical and petrochemical plants, fertilizer plants, oil refineries, and gasification plants. As my colleague, the CMD NTPC was talking about 65% of the overall global anthropogenic CO2 emissions, CCUS target sectors can contribute about 65%. Say whatever is the 36 gigaton per annum, and we are informed by our technology colleagues that about 65% is amenable to the CCUS. And given the present technology situation, we are again told that out of this 23 gigaton per annum of global CO2 emissions from the CCUS target sectors, about 80 gigaton is amenable to capture. We may raise this figure if we make technology advancements. I remember my days when the US took a lead and launched the Carbon Sequestration Leadership Forum. Some of you must be knowing about it, and I participated in some of its policy group meetings. Now we have done almost like 20 years, but still a lot of work needs to be done. We have come a long way, but we have to go still further. In most of the G20 countries, the key enablers for CCUS in terms of technology development, demonstration, policy framework, financing, demonstration and commercial scale CCUS project are at generally at nascent stage. Some of them have made some more progress. Let me talk the present status, what we know as policymaker. Maybe we are not absolutely correct, so you will have a lot of presentations and things to do. There are four broad segments of this technology. We are told that capture part is now fairly, technology is advanced. The challenge lies in the efficiency improvement so that it consumes less energy and it costs less. Because if you have to burn more coal for capturing carbon dioxide, there are problems. So we need to make it more efficient and more cost effective. The second part is the transportation. Transportation, I am told the pipeline transportation is already existing, but there are issues about the safety standards because it has a larger footprint, environmental footprint than the capture. Capture you can do in a plant, like there's a model there. Within a plant you can do, but when you transport the carbon dioxide in a very high density liquid form, there are issues about the safety and about the standards and about the also convincing public that it is safe and at the same time it needs to be cost effective. The third segment is the utilization. We have been discussing CCUS over a number of occasions in Ministry Power along with CMD NTPC and our Chairman CA. The quantum of CO2 which we need to handle is so huge. The storage is unavoidable, but storage, we don't have much visibility about its viability, about its acceptance. So for the time being, I think we need to focus our more efforts on utilization. How to make utilization of the captured CO2 as more useful to the society for our industrial needs and at the same time more cost effective and competitive. Now currently I am told this green methanol is somewhat more competitive because gas prices are higher. So the normal methanol is also expensive, but in the normal scenario, it will be a challenge to sell the green products made out of captured CO2. So the challenge before the whole scientific, engineering and technology community is to work more in the area of utilization, find more products, find more uh, innovative and efficient ways to convert the CO2, captured CO2 in products, so that we can realize value. Because when a power plant sells the products, it also realizes value. It can, to some extent, the set off the costs involved in capture and setting up the capture plants. Third part is the most difficult, the storage. As I say, if we have to see a long-term, say, potential of CCUS, storage is unavoidable, because the quantities we are talking of gigatons of CO2, they probably can't all of it cannot be converted to products. It has to be ultimately stored. Where to store? We have done a study. I think they will present you the more detailed findings. Storage is not very established in the world. There are several questions about its safety and permanence. So the technology people have challenged to address these two aspects of the safety and permanence of the storage. What more important is the one for the governments and the policymakers to change the perception about the storage of CO2. There has to be acceptance. Like there are countries which have a lot of land where there is not much population, but for countries like India and China and all, we have huge population. We don't have much empty land to find for storage. So, and we have to convince people, because whenever we talk of the environmental footprint and so storage, there are always questions and debates from the environmentalists. So we have to not only work for its technology, we have to also work in a mission mode to convince people wherever we undertake storage that it is safe, it is permanent. So these were my some initial thoughts. I will expect that you people will deliberate in detail and come out with more practical solutions and pathways. And in the end, I would like to again emphasize that our world is carbon constrained. We have a huge carbon footprint, and the imperative of the energy security, energy transition is that we have to very quickly tackle it, and deployment of CCUS technologies would lead to sustenance of many number of domestic industries across many countries, as it should be able to garner support across G20 group of countries. Let us all recommit ourselves to the task of combating climate change and embrace the opportunities that CCUS provides. I look forward for the recommendations of this parallel event, and once again I welcome to all the distinguished participants who have come from different worlds and our scientific community. I will again join you in the panel discussion, because my session is going on in the main working group meeting. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Shri Alok Kumar, for your noteworthy keynote address. And you rightly mentioned the enormous role and the importance of CCU in reducing global greenhouse emissions. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now showcase a video about one of flagship CCU project of NTPC. But before showcasing the film, I would request our esteemed dignitaries on the dais to kindly take their respective seats in the audience for better viewing of this film. Ladies and gentlemen, this flagship CCU project of NTPC is being constructed at NTPC Vindhyachal. Once commissioned, this project will be the world's first flue gas CO2 to methanol project. We'll just take a couple of minutes to remove the furniture from the stage, and then we will play the film for you.
A bulk of electricity is generated by using fossil fuels, and the use of fossil fuels releases carbon dioxide. To alleviate this, carbon capture, utilization and storage, that is CCUS, can play a critical role. In CCUS, carbon dioxide is separated from gaseous emissions through custom-designed physical, chemical and biological processes. Upon capture, carbon dioxide can be synthesized to produce an array of green fuels, fertilizers, chemicals, and other green products. NTPC, the largest power utility of India, is setting up a carbon dioxide to green methanol plant, where carbon dioxide is stripped from waste flue gas and catalytically hydrogenated using green hydrogen to produce green methanol. This carbon dioxide to green methanol plant comprises three blocks: carbon capture block, hydrogen generation block, and methanol synthesis block. Carbon capture block. Carbon dioxide of flue gas is captured in the absorber section using modified tertiary amine. Carbon dioxide rich amine is sent to the stripper section. Here, high purity carbon dioxide is stripped from amine using a thermal process. This plant is already commissioned at NTPC Vindhyachal Power Station and is running successfully. Hydrogen block. Green hydrogen is produced in a proton exchange membrane, that is PEM electrolyzer. PEM electrolyzer has been specifically chosen because of its high turn-down ratio and ramp rate, and can be easily coupled with renewable power. Methanol synthesis block. Here, carbon dioxide and hydrogen are catalytically hydrogenated at high pressure and high temperature to produce fuel-grade methanol. Fuel-grade methanol is sent to a set of distillation columns where water is separate and very high purity methanol is produced. The success of this carbon capture and utilization project of NTPC will lead to the reduction in greenhouse gases, while utilizing its natural resource and protecting investments already made in the power and mining sector, thus realizing India's COP26 commitments and reaching the net zero goal by 2070.
Ladies and gentlemen, with that film, we conclude the inaugural session. We will now move on to the plenary session. I will request you to kindly bear with us for a couple of minutes while we make the necessary table arrangements, and then we will commence the plenary session. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now move on to our plenary session. I'd like to take this opportunity to extend a very warm welcome and also invite on stage our esteemed speakers and dignitaries for this session. We're extremely pleased and honored to have with us Dr. V.K. Saraswath, Member Niti Aayog, Government of India. May I request you, sir, to kindly join us. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in extending a very warm and hearty welcome to him. May I also invite Mr. Tim Dixon, Director, International Energy Agency Green R-Gas R&D Program from United Kingdom. A very warm welcome to you, sir. Dr. Nicholas Musioka, CSIR, Council for Scientific and Industrial Research from South Africa. And may I also extreme welcome to Ms. Yukimi Shimura, who's Director of the Mitsubishi UFJ Financial Group Bank from Japan. A very warm welcome to you. If I may, at this point, request our speakers to kindly stick to the time allocated to each of them, which is approximately 8 to 10 minutes. I will now briefly introduce each speaker before inviting them to speak to us. Ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned, we are extremely honored to have amongst us Dr. Vijay Kumar Saraswath, who has served as Secretary Department of Defense R&D, Director General of DRDO and Scientific Advisor to Raksha Mantri. He is the proud recipient of the prestigious Padma Shri as well as Padma Bhushan from the Government of India, and he is currently working as the permanent member of Niti Aayog. With these words, may I now invite Dr. Saraswath, requesting him to kindly address us.
We are very good morning, namaskar. Since morning we have been talking about the energy transitions, and this particular parallel session is going to focus on energy transition using carbon capture, utilization and storage. Enough has been said in the morning by the people who inaugurated this particular seminar. My focus is going to be mostly about how we are actually going to look at the global emissions and what role CCUS is going to play in controlling those emissions for achieving what we identified as the net zero carbon or carbon zero. I think this is going to be a little tricky. I don't know what should be done. It should come in the middle. Why it is coming on these sides? Like your video. Yeah. Thank you. So before they do the arrangements, I would like to mention that as far as India is concerned, the focus on the energy transition has been basically with respect to ensuring that we meet all the three requirements of energy sustainability. That is energy access, energy affordability, and the environmental effect, what we call as the impact on the environment. All three have been taken into account before we identify what should be our energy transition strategy. Many people have been talking about it, that we can directly go to, say, for example, more and more renewable energy. But all of us know that penetration of renewable energy, as it has happened in our case, we have done an accelerated manner. We have reached fairly good investment on the renewable energy, both in terms of solar, onshore, offshore, as well as wind and all. Now we are also even going into the ocean energy and things like that. Now, so the energy transition mix is primarily through the rural energy, but for the base load operations and also all other operations where you need sustained power depending upon the demand, there's a need for us to look for what is our base load energy provisioning. As NTPC mentioned that the base load power would certainly be coming from the existing power plants, and those power plants presently are mostly coal-fired power plants, gas-fired power plants, and in all cases there is a requirement for us to mitigate the carbon dioxide coming from there. Yeah, now I think we have the so if you look at this slide, I am trying to actually give you an impression of what is the global emission what we have today. Our global emissions are in terms of what is the carbon dioxide which is present, that we should take stock of, and our present level. Is there a pointer in this? No, it is changing. Pointer doesn't work? Oh. So you have no pointer? Can you get me a pointer? No. This is a Q manual. So you can change the slides. No, no, no. Okay. No, no, don't worry. Then I'll stick to this place. Don't worry. So that makes now you guys have to understand the graphs yourself. I am not going to give any cursor or anything. The carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere today, as we look at it, because global emissions is what we are talking of, present level is about 410 ppm, and pre-industrial era it was about 280 ppm. There's a very clear indication that if we do the journey as it is and we don't take major actions, the present day rise in carbon dioxide emissions present globally is of the order of 1.3 gigatons per annum per year, and that if you 1.3 ppm per annum. In that case, by about 20 years, you will reach about 440. If that is going to the case, that is disastrous. Now, of course, as a G20 community, we have a major role to play because we have 85% of the global GDP. We control about 75% of the global trade, 65% of the world's population, and we are also responsible for about 75% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. Now, this is also identified by many speakers earlier that global per capita greenhouse gas emissions are about 6.3 tons of CO2 equivalent. This is a 2020 figure. People have been also always saying that what is that India is doing, because we are being identified as using most of the power from the coal. But I would like to mention that India's per capita greenhouse gas emission is only 2.4 tons of CO2 equivalent, which is about 40% less than the world's average. And contribution to the cumulative carbon emissions between 1850 and 2021 has been less than 4%. So if you now see what is this breakup of these carbon dioxide emissions, the breakup of CO2 emissions sector-wise, right from the 1990 and now on 2020 and so on, you take the electricity and heat, which was about 8 billion tons earlier, it has now become 15.76 billion tons. The transport has reached 8.22 billion tons. The manufacturing and construction industry is going to about 6.25 billion tons. The buildings are about 2.79 billion tons, and the industry is about 1.6 billion tons, and so on. And per capita CO2 emission by sector is also indicated here. The the bars are indicating actually the per capita, and the percentage is being indicated by the graph in the green. So you can see that the highest per capita emission of CO2 is coming again in the electricity and heat, followed by transport, then manufacturing, and so on. So, and the percentage wise also 41% to down to about less than 0.1% or 0.04%. As far as India's CO2 emission study is concerned, this is where India's power sector is the largest contributor to CO2 emissions. Power is about 1147 million tons. Industry is 762. Transport is 337. Buildings about 164, and others about 98. The change in the CO2 emissions and the GDP is also keeping pace together. The three graphs which are identified here, the green one is the GDP graph, which is going, as all of you know, and followed by the production-based CO2 emissions, which is the blue graph, and the consumption-based CO2 emissions, which are again going up from 1990 to as high as about 300%. So this is the Indian scenario. Now we have to look at, when I was talking about so many ppms, now how this is ppm in terms of the gigatons, how much is equivalent of carbon dioxide it emerges. Today, from 1990 to 2010, 2020, we have reached about 50 gigatons of carbon dioxide equivalent emissions. If we continue to do the journey, or what we call as the business as usual, beyond the post-industrial era, the project emissions rise to about 150 gigatons oil equivalent by 2100, with no climate policies implemented, resulting in almost about a global average rise in temperature of about 4.1 to 4.8 degrees Celsius. If you follow the current climate policies, which is what the second curve is here, in that you will see about 2.5 to 2.9 degree rise in temperature that will happen, and you will peak about 50 gigatons, limiting the global temperature to that level. But if we employ all the policies which we have identified for 2-degree pathway and the 1.5-degree pathway to limit the greenhouse gas emissions, then only we will be able to get the net zero emissions of goal by about 2070. That is a kind of change which you are going to see. Now, there are different scenarios here also. Potential to go to net zero with technology advancements like improved carbon capture technologies, ocean-based carbon sequestration, and so on. The various graphs what are indicated here is by 220, we have minus 80% scenario peak. That is what about 2.9 gigatons what we are getting here. And if you continue in the same pattern, that reducing the emission intensity at the rate of 1.3 degrees per annum as in 2010 to 2019, we are likely to end up about 1108, that is the gigatons of carbon dioxide, which is fairly not acceptable. And if we take what is called the line of sight scenario, what is this line of sight scenario? Line of sight scenario is where the implementation of India's NDC, existing and currently announced policies are followed. Technology advancement as per the current trajectory, as like we are talking of CCUS, we are talking of other forms of energy, they can all be employed, like the energy storage and so on. Shift in demand to sustainable alternatives. In fact, before the seminar started, we were talking among all the professionals here. It is basically the demand-driven system. And if this shift takes place, then we will be able to get what is called the line of sight. And if we do that, then we will be able to save about 207 tons of gigatons of CO2 equivalent, and we can come down to about 1.9. And if we go into the accelerated scenario, then certainly there is a major advantage where adoption of new policies such as carbon pricing, technology breakthroughs, for example, carbon capture, utilization, and sequestration, and faster implementation of all these levers, and accelerated shift to sustainable consumption, like electric vehicles, alternative materials, core cereals, green steel, and so on. If we do that, we will touch about 0.4 in the accelerated manner. That is what we'll get. Now, what are the kind of simulation exercises have yielded? According to the International Energy Agency, to reach net zero, over 10 billion tons of CO2 will be needed to be captured per year by 2070. That's a huge number. If we have to take care of this 10 billion tons, that means you really need to make major technological advancements, and how to do this becomes a major issue. You can see the distribution. Carbon dioxide is about 74.4%. Rest all are very small numbers. So for this, the emerging technology option for clean energy transition becomes the order of the day. I think our inaugural speakers have talked about what are the technologies coming, but the technologies which are going to come here, for example, the alternate fuels, the hydrogen is going to make a major difference. Carbon dioxide sequestration, as we are talking it, carbon capture, renewable energy penetration to a maximum, but renewable energy with affordable energy storage methods, as our honorable minister mentioned in the inaugural session today in the energy vertical group. Uh, the storage even today has got much higher cost at the moment. Mobility has to be the electrical mobility, and for the base load and also production of hydrogen, I think small modular nuclear reactors have to find its way. Methods of producing green methanol and ammonia and using water battery. These are the emerging technologies for clean energy transitions which have to be followed altogether. Now, I'm not going to say that you should drop this or take this. I think every geography has to take particular choices based upon their supply chain, resources, and the capabilities. So world needs to address rising greenhouse gas emissions without compromising the economic growth. That is the demand. That is where CCUS will play a pivotal role in emission reduction. And that's why this slide shows CCUS is a central to direct air capture of carbon dioxide, taking carbon dioxide from power sector, cement sector, iron and steel sector, chemicals, gasification, refineries, and even hydrogen production. It is suited for new and existing fossil fuel-based power plants, a decarbonization solution for hard-to-abate sectors, direct capture of CO2 from atmosphere, and manufacturing methanol, ammonia, and chemicals using the captured carbon dioxide. It can enable a low-carbon and sustainable future. Now, what are the pathways for this? You saw a wonderful film, and I would like to congratulate NTPC for doing this particular exercise of setting up the first carbon capture plant in the country. Carbon flows in CCUS are CO2 source identification. Why I'm saying source identification? Because the percentage of CO2 which is present in different flue gases also dictates the technology choices. For example, thermal power plants, you may have only about, say, about 10 to 12%, whereas cement plants and steel plants, you may get about 25 to 35% in that region. So you have different technologies for each one of them. So CO2 source identification, corresponding to that, carbon dioxide capture and separation from these plants. The number of plants have been identified: power, iron, steel, cement, gasification, chemicals. And this CO2, once captured, has to be purified and compressed. And compressed CO2 has to be transported, which was being talked about by Mr. Alok Kumar. He talked about the compressed cryogenic CO2 to be transported in pipelines. Then comes storage and utilization. The technologies for storage are enhanced oil recovery, enhanced CBM, the coal-based methane, and deep saline aquifers and the basalts which are there. Then the solutions for utilization are urea, food and beverages, chemicals, aggregates, building for utilization.